Lovely, thank you. Assemblymember Garratt.
Thank you. I'm going to come on in a moment to some questions about e-scooters, but I had a couple of follow-up questions on the bus safety question, or topic, if I may. I think, so I've looked at this. It appears to be in common with almost all politicians these days. My dad used to drive buses, so it's something I'm a bit familiar with. There seems to have been quite a bit of work done on this already, lots of questions asked by previous Assembly members before I got here. And one of the things that I find comes out consistently is it's not clear who exactly is responsible for the safety of buses. And what I mean by that is that when things are going well, of course, lots of people want to claim credit, but when there's a problem, it seems there's a sort of Spider-Man meme situation where everything is somebody else's problem. And I'm afraid to say I've heard a bit of that, maybe hinted at today. So there's, in your answers to Assemblymember Rogers, there were lots of talk of dialogue and conversation and talking about things. And what I want to know is, for example, in relation to rosters, do you have, and have you considered having, a direct power just to enforce rostering and say to bus companies, this is the safe way to roster bus drivers based on, for example, the railway industry or the airline industry? Do you have the power to do that? Would you like the power to do that? Because it feels a bit like you ask them nicely, and maybe they do and maybe they don't. And if they don't, we all just sit here talking about it, and drivers are still driving fatigued.
So I think that, does TfL want a direct power to...
Well, do you have it? And if you don't have it, would you like it?
So, so I would have to ask the director of buses whether she would want that direct power. From a safety point of view, I feel that we, through the dialogue and the way we set conditions for the bus operations, we have a productive and really fruitful way of actually setting out the outcomes we want. So I don't think that for me, and that I would be clear that actually just directing rosters is necessarily the best way of getting the outcome that we want. I mean, you might think I'm sort of evading the question, but the issue about managing fatigue is much broader than just rosters. It's about the whole safety culture within the organisation. It's about the openness for people, which I believe we are working with operators to do, to say that if they do arrive fatigued, that they don't drive and they have a safe and open culture. And that can happen with different, that isn't just down to the rosters, that's due to what I'm saying, to a lot of different factors. So I don't actually know if the director of bus operators would like to direct rosters, but I think that we can achieve the safety outcomes that we need, and we have shown really good progress in terms of driving improvements in safety from buses in London. Clearly, and it's really important that you get the different evidence that you have, there's more to do.
Yes, I mean, that's the evidence that we had from Lorraine at the last meeting here was that essentially flatly contradicted what you've just said. And what I should probably also add is that subsequently, other bus drivers have come forward anonymously, and not just anonymously, but insisting that we don't reveal anything about them, because precisely because the culture is exactly not what you've just said. The culture is one of fear that if anybody raises safety concerns, in the scenario that my colleague brought up, where somebody feels fatigued, they don't feel competent to drive, they don't feel rested enough to drive a bus for a full shift. They feel very clear, those drivers, more than one driver, not just Lorraine, and more than one besides Lorraine, felt very clear that the culture was absolutely 80 degrees the opposite of what you've said. And so what I'm sitting here thinking is that yet again we have a scenario where here, at the level that we're having this conversation, everything is lovely and you think you're having these productive conversations, and the drivers actually doing the job think that it isn't happening. And so somewhere between here and the bus cab, the message isn't getting through. And so I come back to my question, who exactly is responsible for the fact that the message isn't getting through? Or for finding out whether the message is? Because you clearly think that it is. The information I'm getting and other members are getting is that it isn't. So who's taking charge of finding out if it is, and if it isn't, making sure it is?
I will follow up with the Director of Bus Operations to find out exactly what is behind those the statements and witnesses that you've spoken to. But I also do have, because we do go out and meet with, I've met with bus drivers, go to the depot, and so have colleagues in my team, and primarily the bus operations is liaising with them every day. We do get positive feedback, we do also get the counter argument, which you're not getting here. That doesn't mean to say that what you've heard is not really important, and it is, which is why we're driving a bus operations program with bus operators. So we will work with all operators who clearly hold the employment responsibility. They're the ones interfacing day to day with their staff to make sure that it's really clear that the message coming from TfL is that this is important, and we know that this does drive safety. So I can take, I'm listening to what you're saying. We will take that away, but it's not to say that there isn't also positive feedback. Just because you haven't spoken to someone who might give you a different account doesn't mean to say that that isn't true. And we can.
I think, with respect, what I would say is I had a perfectly safe journey, 2 journeys, in fact, to get here on my bike today. So I could give you a positive account of my time on my bike. That doesn't mean we don't have a problem with safety for cyclists. The fact that we appear to have a significant number of drivers who have a totally opposite view of the safety culture. And I suppose my question is, what is the process by which this Vision Zero plan ends up in the minds and in the culture of the bus depots? Because it really doesn't seem to be.
Well, so again, I would challenge. I think there is more progress than you're saying. So there is a bus safety program. There is a bus safety manager within TfL who sits within the director of the bus safety buses, and that person works directly with the bus operators all the time to progress the training that we've talked about, to ensure that our contracts are delivering the safer buses that we've talked about, to monitor the data that we've talked about, and that results in ongoing dialogue with the bus operators. They do follow up on investigations on any incidents that are significant that happen. They're looking at the data. So there are people scrutinizing this and working with the bus operators every day to try to drive this forward. And where it's not happening in the right way, we will take action. We will follow up.
So if someone is killed or seriously injured on the road by a bus, what investigation does TfL carry out into that?
So it's called a Nimi Process, and I'm just trying to remember what the NIMI stands for. But it's similar to, obviously, there was a go look see immediately to go and look at the place where the location where it happened, to see if there's anything at all within the physical environment of the road network that could immediately be amended. Maybe there's a problem with the lights. Maybe there's a defect with the road network that we could address. Work really closely with the bus operator to understand what the circumstances are, and that results in a report which is examined, and then actions are put in place as far as possible to address it. If it was unfortunately a serious incident, obviously the police would be likely to be involved, and if it was indeed a fatal incident, there would be a fatal collision investigation by the police, and we would work very closely to understand any learnings from that process. So it's quite extensive, and I can think of a number of examples where we've very carefully looked at the lessons that have come from such tragedies.
So it's, I'm very conscious of time, but hopefully there's a yes/no answer. So it's TfL that carry out that process, and it happens every time there's a KSI?
No, it's jointly with the operator.
Okay.
In the incident of a bus.
But is there a TfL person there?
Yes.
Okay. I'll perhaps draw that to an end, Chair. I'm very conscious of time. A couple of questions about e-scooters.